Everybody wants to be better at burpees, and to get better at burpees, there's 5 main things, and we're going to cover them in today's videos. It's explosive strength, core strength, flexibility, upper body strength, and technique, which will also include movement efficiency. The first thing we're going to start off with is flexibility. So in order to get good at the movement, you are going to need a degree of flexibility to do it, or it's a lot harder work.
Yeah, because when we started it out, well, you couldn't do a burpee, could you, very well, without stretching? You had to do all these stretching and get used to the movement before we could do the movement efficient.
Yeah, so I had a lot tighter hamstrings, a lot tighter hip flexors, lower back was tight. So it was a case of freeing a lot of things off before I started doing anything. But the more you can work on that flexibility, you don't have to do all that freeing off. But the key is to get your hip flexors looser. But when I say looser, that you want to have more flexibility, but you want to have strength with it.
Yeah.
Flexibility with no strength is going to be no good.
And I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah, if you just make yourself flexible,
yeah, it's not good.
You open yourself up to more injuries. You're not going to be as strong. You're not going to be as powerful. So you want to be flexible, but have the strength with it.
Especially core strength. Actually, you don't realise how much core strength you need to do these movements.
That's why core strength is one of the 5 things that we're going to cover.
There you go.
So for flexibility, work on developing hip flexor flexibility, hamstring flexibility, and lower back to a degree. They're the main ones. And depending on what technique you use, if you're doing the step up one, if you haven't got much flexibility, it's hard to step to where you want to be.
Oh, I know it is. So
I found at the beginning easy to jump back and jump forward rather than step forward because of my lack of flexibility. That tightness then created a better jump. So that leads us on to number 2, which is core strength. If your core isn't strong enough, and your core being the muscles around here, so it's not just your abs, it's your muscles at the side, your obliques and your lower back.
Yeah.
If you're not strong there, the movement's going to be a lot harder to do. When you're jumping forwards and back, if you're collapsing in your back loads, it's a lot harder to do. Exercises you can do for your core include planks.
They're the worst thing ever, but yes.
Side planks.
They're even worse.
You can do things like, we're going to keep things basic, things like even doing your farmer's carry, doing them, holding them both, or single arm carry.
Yeah.
Just make sure if you do a single arm carry, you don't then lean over the weight, you stay upright, and then that's going to work your obliques.
You told me off of that yesterday.
Yeah, it's easy to get into habit of then leaning, but you want to work that core to get it stronger. You can do those farmer's carry where you hold the weight above your head, single arm ones as well. That'll work your core and shoulder stability, which is another thing you need for being good at burpees. Other exercises you can do for your core, you can do things like crunches, weighted crunches. If you're doing things like squats and deadlifts, they will also work your core a lot when you're doing them. And it's important that when you are doing your burpees, that you get the technique right, and that leads to the next bit.
Oh God.
That you keep your core strong to develop your core. So don't neglect adding a little bit of core work or direct core work, especially at the end of your workouts.
Yeah, that's what we've been trying to do a bit more of, or we're going to be.
Yeah, and that can, as I said, that can be done with various planks, various dumbbell work, and there's lots of other direct core stuff you can do, but they're the easiest ones, just to add in 5 minutes at the end.
I know.
And that'll have a big carryover to a lot of the workout that you
It's easy to neglect these things because they are boring and you feel like during it that it's not getting anywhere. It really does, but it does come through.
The core ones are ones you can add as a bit of a home workout as well. So if you're thinking, I'm pushed for time at the gym, I'm trying to maximize the 45 minutes, hour, whatever it is you've got. If you've got a little bit more time in the evening, maybe that's a time you can add in, just do front plank, side planks, and just work on them. And there's loads of variations you can do at planks to progress them when you get good at those basics. But like with anything, the important thing is now the basics before you worry about doing anything more advanced. Another aspect that you want to make sure that you develop that will benefit your burpees is upper body strength. So there's a few exercises in Hyrox where upper body strength will play a decent role, and burpee broad jumps is definitely one of them. And you can keep it simple with the exercises you need to do for that. Getting good at press ups. With your press ups, this is where you want to make sure you've got a strong core, so that when you're doing your press ups, you're not collapsing down. So when you're doing your press ups, you will develop your core as well. But yeah, developing press ups, developing hand release press ups, you can do close grip press ups, you can do wider press ups. There's a lot of things that are going to have a carryover, and including shoulder stability and just the movement to bring yourself back up.
Yeah.
So there's other exercises you can do, like if you're in a gym, you can do things like bench press, you can do dumbbell press, you can do dips, you can do overhead press.
Yeah.
Lots of different things that to develop that upper body strength. Don't forget to make sure you don't neglect your pulling movements. So back work. So single arm dumbbell rows, bent over rows, barbell rows, lots of stuff to work on your lats as well to make sure that you've got well balanced upper body strength. And then that can then have a carryover to your sled pull. So what you find with Hyrox, and this is one of the ways Hyrox was developed, was you want to be strong at everything because everything's being tested when you're doing that Hyrox. So don't neglect your upper body strength with what you're doing. It is predominantly a lower body sport. But yeah, definitely doing some upper body work will help with your burpee broad jumps. How efficient you are at doing your burpee broad jumps is also going to play a massive part in it. If you think of what you like, if you're poor technique at running, running's way harder.
Oh,
Your
it's so
technique's
true.
good. You watch the people who are really good at it, they just flow. Exactly the same with burpee broad jumps. If your technique is poor, it's going to be way harder to do it. So work on that technique. And what I mean by that is, when you're doing your burpees, you don't have to keep doing them till you're completely exhausted. Because if you're then doing poor technique, you are then actually reinforcing poor technique.
And injuries.
One, injuries, yeah. Two, you're teaching yourself how to do them poorly.
Yeah.
And so you think when you're doing burpees as an exercise, again, you can relate this a bit to running. With your running, you'll do longer, slower runs. You'll do running at race pace. You'll do faster runs. Think of that with your burpees as well. And you can think about that for every Hyrox station that you do. So with burpees, you're going to want to do some where you're doing them at your race pace. So you're learning that pacing, you're learning the movement, you're working on that. You're going to do some where you deliberately try and go slower so you can do more without having to have a rest.
Yeah.
So you might just take a second while you're on the floor before you bring yourself back up
I
to your
do
burpees, or 2 seconds or 3 seconds, whatever it is, or catch your breath and bend over a bit, without letting yourself getting completely exhausted. And then you'll do some where you might do shorter, sharper bursts of them where you're going to work on that explosiveness. And that'll lead us on to another one in a minute. But the more efficient you are at the movement, the better you will be. And that efficiency comes from developing what we've just spoke about. If you've got good flexibility, if you've got good upper body strength, if you've got a good core strength, odds on your technique is going to be better. When you're lacking in one of them, that's when your technique isn't going to be as good. But just think technique and don't get sloppy.
And it's interesting actually, because what we've learned, or I've learned more so, is it's areas, building your areas. So if you're not working on your burpees for now, you've nailed that, go to a different area, like you said, pull your back strength. So you have to do things in different stages, don't you? And at the minute, my burpees are all right, but I do want to improve so I can go for longer. So from doubles to solo, I have to do more.
And then the final thing we're going to cover on this is explosive lower body strength.
This is literally my worst nightmare, but anyway.
If for you to get good at burpees, you're going to have to be explosive with your lower body, or you're going to have at least some decent level of lower body strength.
Is that like box jumps and things like that?
But again, with this, it's thinking, work on the foundations, build good foundations, then build it up. So if you're new to doing anything and you're going, I've heard plyometrics are good. Yeah, if you haven't done a decent amount of basic strength training to get stronger, plyometrics are probably going to be a lot higher chance of getting injured, especially if you're going, I've heard depth jumps are good, and then you start putting in depth jumps. So work to the level you're at and then gradually build things up. What we're going to do now, we're going to go through some of the lower body explosive exercises that you can do and that you can start adding into your training. Doesn't mean add them all in. We're just going to go through a few now.
A few
give
ideas.
you examples of what you can do to help develop that explosive strength. Remember to always keep in exercises of your basic strength, things like deadlifts and squats, which can be great. And then these are more the power stuff.
You can practice normal burpees. If you want to make it a bit different, you can do burpee to plate. Or you can add some weight with doing a normal burpee. Another good one actually is just practicing your jumps, because they're the explosive movements. So literally. So you could actually just practice doing these jumps. You could practice moving forward with them as well.